So there's a lot to play out. I'm just a bit concerned. There's a lot to look at that had played out in the weekend. Of course, politics was a big one, which we're going to discuss later on the show. But because two things crossed my mind. And first thing was, I constantly get scared by the privilege of what we do and our proximity to the people we get to be close to and the job we're given to do as people who hold the powerful to account. Sometimes you have the opportunity to have known certain persons before they became quote-unquote powerful, and then they become powerful. By powerful, I mean they get into office, they are one office or the other, occupy one office or the other. I don't want to mention any specific office. And then you compare who they were to who they are right now. And sometimes it's totally the at variance with each other. Some turn out good, some turn out very horrible. What I'm saying in essence is that I get terrified by what power can do to people. So I kind of agree that sometimes when you get power, what power does to you is to bring out who you really are. You've always been that person. If you're evil and insensitive and callous, it's going to show because now you have the opportunity. If you are kind-hearted, you're compassionate, you have the people at heart, it's going to show. So I'm saying that to say, now that all of us are preparing for this election, because election is what is happening right now, examine the people that have had the opportunity to have power and ask yourself, what did power produce in their lives? Are they the kind of people that should have power? I'm telling you for a fact, Bukola, from where I sit, there are people that should never have access power because what they are doing with power is very disturbing from my own point of view. So you have your governors, we have our president, you have senators, you have members of the assembly, you have local government chairmen, you have members of the reps and state assembly. When you examine them, what have they been able to do with power? That's my simple question this morning. I'll just processing it over the weekend. And I just hope we can't get a perfect situation, but Bukola, we can get somewhere with the kinds of leadership we need for our country. Some are trying, some had no business or have no business being in power. That's my take, a quick, venting this morning, Bukola.
Jeffrey, it seems as if some of your, or one of your, old friends that you've always known may have accessed power in the last
I have a lot of them.
Couple of days, and then they stop picking your calls.
No, not picking my calls.
Because that's what typically happens. No,
it's not just
when you have a friend who just attains an office, and after some time, perhaps
no, I don't have a problem. People
they're still picking your calls, but afterwards, you no longer pick your calls. They no longer read your messages.
No, it's far from that. Okay. I don't, by the grace of God, I built myself to the point where even what I am today, being in the public, doesn't give me any point of validation at all. And this is being sincere. So picking my call, not picking my call, I'm talking about what you're able to do with the power you have. I've seen people become power hungry. I've seen people become megalomaniacs. I've seen people become all kinds of things. It has nothing to do with personal. I just observe, knowing who they were and then who they are right now, said, nah, this guy, this is not who you were.
Well, we could draw out a lot of examples from this current government. When they were in opposition, they led the fuel subsidy protest, with other key members of the civil society right there at the Ganifa Park in 2012. Very historic and very significant, but the same government is in power now, and it's removed fuel subsidy, and it's an advocate of fuel subsidy, and all those speakers against that particular policy at that time have become astute supporters of fuel subsidy. We could draw another example of this same government which carpeted the former PDP-led government for being unable to tackle insecurity. But, we're here now in 2026, May, with political parties conducting primaries, and we're in the middle of very serious political concerns with a lot of support expressed for the administration, with an interpretation of its efforts, to tackle the security challenge in a narrative that, is as compelling as, confusing when you wonder what the results are as against this administration is working. It's different from, the denial that we saw that shaped the approach to tackling insecurity under the last administration. And so from Jeffrey's analysis this morning, you could say that the test of power has shown, the character of this particular administration. And so what is it for you? Has it really been renewed hope, especially as we begin to look at the result of the primaries, where Mr. President got nearly 11 million votes, well over what was recorded even in the actual election in 2023. So has it been renewed hope for you, or as some would say, renewed shege? And Jeffrey, speaking of which, I just asked you before we started off the program that have you seen the breakdown of the results from the different local government or maybe even states of the federation, so that we can, see what those states were able to turn out, and then we can compare it with the outcome of the real elections in 2023. It's really an interesting development coming through from the presidential primaries of the All Progressives Congress. And, the president was speaking to the conduct of the primaries as peaceful, and that's the way politics really should be. Perhaps if we have that soundbite ready, we can help you to get a feel of what happened during the elections. And the national chairman of the party was also speaking to the outcome of the, the presidential primary as very competitive. And I did hear another soundbite, where one of the party leaders was saying that a challenger got the party to wake up, to stand up and see that, it was not just going to be business as usual. But, what was the difference between that opponent, contesting and not contesting at all, Jeffrey?
So
Mr. Stanley Osipo, right?
Let me be as clear, so that I'm going to be quoted as clear as crystal.
Yeah.
The APC has a model. I have studied their model.
Yeah.
When it comes to a new leadership, Muhammadu Buhari's first coming, it was by delegates election. When it was time for him to be re-elected, it was by direct primaries. And Muhammadu Buhari scored, I think, 14.6 or so million votes. And then in the real election, he scored about 14.1 million votes. When President Bola Tinubu emerged as president, he was through that indirect primary, I should say, that indirect primary of the 2015. And then 2023 was also indirect primary, delegates election. And so re-election now, they've gone back to the issue of direct primaries. And I feel that they also influenced the whole consensus and direct primaries as a model. If anybody told you...
Please be clear, they influenced, how do you mean?
I mean, of course, they're in the majority in the National Assembly, so,
okay,
they can move things.
Around.
I'm saying, I believe, yes.
Okay, so the Electoral Act, as amended, may have been amended to support the ruling party.
If you look at how their party functions, and there's nothing wrong with it if, it's in the general interest of the people, depending on what you're looking at.
Well, Jeffrey, even if there was something wrong with it, in this type of democracy that we operate, it is usually said that the minority would have their say, but the majority would have their way. That's at the risk of the majority being wrong.
There's that point as well. Where I'm going to with all this, my big grammar, is the fact that if anybody tells you, any APC member, anybody tells you that this was a contest, that's a lie. This is not a contest at all. What the APC tries to do, especially with this election, is to see how on ground they are as a political party. So this was not a primaries for contest between Stanley Osipo, who members of the party don't even know, with greater sense of respect, and President Bola Tinubu. This was to evaluate how well they are on ground. It's an assessment exercise. And also to be what I call electoral vote show of force, kind of. They were well put together. They registered 12 million votes, according to them. And then I think accredited...
12 million registered members.
Members, yes. Yeah. Registered members. And then I think the people that are accredited comes around 11 million, almost 12 million or all. So this had nothing to do with Stanley Osipo. This is APC trying to test the waters and saying, okay, I think we're ready to go as far as the 2027 election. But it doesn't work that way. Even them, they are not naive to know that it doesn't work. Of course, I'm sure there are those geometric countings that happen in certain parts of the country, like we saw in other primaries, where from 1 to 1,000. And, when it comes to elections that don't use beavers, you see all kinds of numbers. Primaries of political parties like this, local government election, we have miraculous numbers. So even the APC, the ones who understand how this thing works, they are not fooled. They know where the real numbers are and where the real numbers are not. So in my assessment, I feel that in the coming election, there are things that will work for and work against the APC. There are things that will work for and work against the opposition. The APC has the uphill task of proving to Nigerians where they've not been able to solve insecurity. The issue of the economy biting hard on people is also a great factor, and that will involve a lot of protest votes as well. But the opposition themselves, what is working against them is the ability to put their own house in order as opposition, splitting their strength in so many directions that will work in the interest of the All Progressives Congress. So where I'm going to with all of the Bukola is the fact that don't be deceived. This was not direct primaries. It's a contest between Stanley Osifo and President Bola Tinubu. This was just the APC testing the waters. They're asking themselves, how solid are we on ground? And they've made up their mind. They know that some states, they're not going to win. They know the states, they will get 25% and all of that. And the numbers are now out. You know, my dear friends, Monday Okwebolo, you know, he has said he's going to give the president 2.5 million votes. In this primary, I don't think he gave the president to 200,000 from his party. Because that's why I tell you, there's something called political hot air. I have studied this thing, and nothing moves me easily like that. But it's a politics, it's a game of numbers.
But Jeffrey, before we reach our conclusion...
So the ADC is doing their primaries, by the way.
Yeah, but don't forget, let's also mention that an ADC group that are loyal to Dumebi Kachiku has picked him as their presidential candidate for the 2023 election.
Yes.
But we'd like to see, you know, what the outcome of the votes are from Edo State in particular before we conclude.
No, it's 130 something thousand.
It's 130.
So I will check the numbers.
Yes, we should check the numbers. Cry. But it's important to point out that Governor Monday Okwebolo was not able to deliver 2.5 million votes in this presidential primary.
He's saying he didn't say in this primary, but he said in, so that we don't quote him wrongly.
The morning shows the day, Jeffrey. If that can be done in 2027, it should be able to at least attempt it in 2020.
He cannot. Can I say it
2026 again? Ahead of
he will
the
not give
election
the president
during the primary.
There is no, let me put it clear, no state in Nigeria, quote me, and I want to come back and say I'm wrong. There is no state in Nigeria, even the KKK, cannot give the president 2.5 million votes.
Kaduna,
Katsina, Kano. They cannot give the president 2.5 million votes as things stands now, except things change. And the president knows he's too smart, but he's going to take all those.
All right. But another thing we should point out before we exit this particular timeout on the program is that the APC says it has been able to record over 12 million registered voters during his e-registration exercise, hence what we have seen in this presidential primary, where the president scored about 10.9 million votes, nearly 11 million votes. Don't forget that in 2023, the popular vote in the presidential election, the actual election for the APC, for the incumbent who won at that time, President Bola Tinubu, was 8.794 million votes. And so let's see if the APC will be able to return this feat in 2027, January, I believe that's when the presidential election will hold. We'll be able to repeat this feat at that time. We should be looking at the numbers that have been turned out during this presidential primary and, be able to tell whether indeed the primary election was credible, was conducted, and those numbers are actually real figures and not geometric counting that we have seen shape this particular primary election, especially for the All Progressives Congress. But indeed, all other political parties conducted primaries, over the weekend, and we've seen some candidates emerge. But Jeffrey, it's a confusing situation, and we'll delve into it, during our conversations much later on the program. We've seen some PDP members producing some candidates. Is it the Wike-led PDP, or is it the Saminu Turaki-led PDP? We've also seen the ADC produce some candidates. Is it the Dumebi Kachiku group that are producing candidates, or the, if you like, former Senate President David Mark-led group producing those candidates? So we should look at those processes critically. But we'll take a moment now, right, Jeffrey?
Yeah, so my confidence in being able to predict, in fact, when you get close to the election, I will not give you exact numbers from my own extrapolations of how the president and other parties may likely fare. I hope I'll be able to look at all of them. Tell you, my confidence is the fact that as long as Beavers works, there are a lot of things that you're hearing all these politicians that will not happen. Because the beauty of Beavers, that I'm not saying people can't cheat, but the way you rig, because there will be rigging, there will be violence, there will be all of that. The scale of it is different. The way you rig in Nigerian election now, you have to rig around the numbers on the Beavers machine. So if there are 1,000 registered persons at this polling unit, 1,000 for instance, of course you don't expect the entire 1,000 to come in most cases. So you maybe see 500 persons come out or 700 come to be accredited. That's what the good thing about the visa is. Not like giving you ATM machine to go and withdraw money with my card. You have to be physically present. That's
for the Beavers to authenticate you with your card.
You can't do it on behalf of anyone. So that's the confidence I have in predicting these numbers. So when you now, people now accredit to have 1,700 or 500, if you have to rig, you have to rig around that 700. However you want to do that mischievous thing. If you do 701, that election is cancelled in that polling.
Jeffrey, I'm not so confident.
I am.
And you know why?
I have to be confident
because of what we've been seeing already during these primaries. We've seen events ahead of these primaries where, you know, party members converge at a particular location, you know, at a political rally, and they're getting envelopes in exchange for their beavers, for their voters card. So we've seen that already.
No,
so is that a pre-election inducement that is happening already?
There will be inducement. There will be all kinds of shenanigans that will happen. There's this much we can do because our institutions are not strong, not even INEC. I'm saying that with voter apathy, with the records we have in terms of data, we are doing somewhere around 25 to 35%. We hardly do 40% of the entirety of the registered number of voters. So that's the premise I'm coming from. If you have to rig around the numbers. You can't rig beyond the numbers. But the watchful eyes of the EFCC and INEC, we hope.
Our politicians have become adept at maneuvering around
there was an election that happened, I think in Kogi State, where they brought a pre-filled EC88. EC88.
From EC88?
Yeah. I mean, pre-filled. INEC had to act quickly. So we'll be here. We'll do a series on how elections are rigged. I will in Nigeria. But we'll take a break. We'll be back after this. Stay with us.